quietly. "I want to make broader decisions about patient care. But that requires resources I do not have. My mother is aging, and her care takes most of my income. There is no path forward for someone like me. Someone like me." As though her circumstances had created permanent boundaries. Alexander found himself overcome with unfamiliar emotion. Not pity, which Clara would have rejected, but recognition. Recognition of excellence going unnoticed. Recognition of dreams deferred by circumstance rather than capability. In Clara Brennan, he saw something rare and precious, brilliance wrapped in humility, strength disguised as invisibility. And for the first time in years, Alexander Thorne found himself genuinely curious about another person. 3 weeks later, Alexander made a formal donation to Westbrook Memorial Hospital with a specific condition: the hospital would fund a scholarship program for qualified nursing staff to pursue medical education. Clara was selected as the first recipient. When she learned the news, she believed it was based purely on merit. But when Alexander appeared at the hospital to deliver scholarship details personally, she understood what had happened. Her first instinct was to refuse. "I cannot accept this," she said firmly when they met in the hospital courtyard at dawn. "People will think I earned this through something other than capability." Alexander listened to her concerns and recognized something he had never encountered: a woman afraid of being seen. His entire world had been built on visibility and accumulation. Clara's world had been built on invisibility and self-sacrifice. The collision created something unexpected: genuine connection. "I did not do this because you did me a service," he explained. "I did this because I watched you save a life and remain invisible. I watched you study instead of rest. I watched you give without expecting return. The hospital system failed you. I simply corrected an obvious failure." Clara considered his words carefully. She looked at this man from a completely different universe and saw genuine conviction in his expression. She saw no expectation, only recognition. And recognition, she was discovering, changed everything. "I will accept," she said finally. "But I will work to repay your investment. I will become the doctor I am capable of becoming. And I will ensure every patient I treat knows they matter." Alexander smiled then, and Clara saw something shift in his eyes, warmth that surprised them both. "I believe you completely," he said softly. Their handshake lingered longer than professional courtesy required. Clara felt electricity travel up her arm, settling somewhere in her chest. As she walked back into the hospital, Clara realized that for the first time in years, someone had truly seen her. Not the invisible nurse, not the shadow in the corridors, but Clara Brennan herself. The sensation was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Part 4: The Awakening. Medical school while maintaining part-time hospital work was grueling. Clara survived on determination and coffee, her days blurring into an exhausting rhythm of classes, clinicals, and overnight shifts. Alexander became an unexpected constant in her chaos. He appeared at the hospital cafeteria with meals when she forgot to eat. He sent textbooks she mentioned needing, always with notes insisting they were investments in future medicine rather than gifts. He listened during late-night phone calls when exhaustion made her doubt everything. "You are remarkable," he told her one evening when she called nearly in tears over a failed examination. "One setback does not define your capability." "You barely know me," Clara whispered. "I know enough." His voice was warm through the phone. "I know you give blankets to cold patients with your own money. I know you memorize every patient's name because they deserve dignity. I know you saved a man's life and asked for nothing in return." The words wrapped around her like an embrace. Their relationship evolved gradually, professional respect deepening into friendship, friendship warming into something neither could name. When hospital politics threatened Clara's scholarship, Dr. Webb claiming she had received preferential treatment, Alexander responded with characteristic directness. He called an emergency board meeting, presenting documentation of Clara's academic achievements, patient satisfaction scores, and the original diagnosis she had provided that saved William Chen's life. This woman deserves recognition, not persecution, Alexander declared before the assembled administrators. She exemplifies everything this institution should celebrate. The scholarship was protected. Dr. Webb was quietly reassigned to a different department. That evening, Clara found Alexander waiting outside the hospital, snow falling softly around him. "You did not have to do that," she said. "You exposed yourself to criticism, to accusations of favoritism." Psalm.
The fluorescent lights of Westbrook Memorial Hospital hummed their eternal song as Clara Brennan pushed her medication cart down the fourth-floor corridor. It was 2 in the morning, that liminal hour when the building seemed to breathe differently, when shadows stretched longer and time moved strangely. At 27, Clara had become a ghost in her own workplace. Her auburn hair was pulled into a practical bun, her worn white shoes squeaking softly against polished linoleum. The night shift badge on her uniform marked her as someone easily overlooked: junior nurse, minimal authority, maximum responsibility. She had learned to accept invisibility as simply part of her existence. Clara stopped at room 407, gently pushing open the door. Inside, an elderly woman named Margaret slept beneath pale blue blankets. Clara checked the monitors with practiced efficiency, noting vital signs on her tablet, adjusting the fluid drip that had shifted slightly. Margaret stirred. "Is that you, dear?" "It is, Mrs. Patterson." "Go back to sleep. Everything looks perfect. You are the only one who calls me by name." Margaret's voice was thick with sleep. "The day nurses just call me room 407. Clara smiled softly, tucking the blanket more securely around the older woman's frail shoulders. "You are Margaret Patterson, retired schoolteacher, grandmother of 4, and you make the best apple pie in Connecticut. You told me so yourself." Margaret chuckled weakly before drifting back to sleep. Clara continued her rounds, moving through corridors where few colleagues acknowledged her presence. The night shift existed in hospital hierarchy's basement, essential but forgotten, working while the world slept, invisible to the prestige of daytime operations. Hidden in her worn shoulder bag was a medical journal she had borrowed from the public library. During her breaks, while other nurses scrolled through phones or complained about schedules, Clara studied. She absorbed information like oxygen, cardiology, neurology, rare conditions that fascinated her. Her colleagues had never invited her to join their conversations anyway, so solitude had become her ally. Dr. Marcus Webb was the cardiac surgeon on call that evening. Clara had only glimpsed him a handful of times: brilliant, efficient, utterly dismissive of anyone he considered beneath his station. That included every night shift nurse in the building. Clara was restocking supplies in room 402 when she heard the commotion beginning in the intensive care unit. Her body recognized emergency sounds before her conscious mind could process them: monitor alarms shrieking, code calls echoing through intercoms, the quiet night transforming into controlled chaos. She moved quickly toward the ICU, professional instincts overriding her usual self-effacing hesitation around senior staff. The patient in critical condition was William Chen, 61 years old, admitted 4 days prior for observation following a minor cardiac incident. He was supposed to be stable. He was supposed to be progressing toward discharge. The ICU nurses were already mobilizing when Dr. Webb arrived with the precision of someone who had made this entrance countless times. His presence commanded the space itself. Behind him came residents and medical students, all moving with the deference of people in the presence of greatness. Clara positioned herself at the periphery, close enough to assist, far enough to remain unnoticed. Exactly where she preferred. The monitors told the story of a man in acute distress. William's heart was not responding to standard interventions. Medications brought no improvement. The defibrillator failed to restore normal rhythm. Precious seconds became precious minutes as the team worked through protocol. Clara watched with quiet intensity. She saw the rhythm on the screen, the chest compressions, the desperation beginning to creep into Dr. Webb's controlled demeanor. The medical journal she had read just hours earlier suddenly became relevant. An article about rare complications in post-cardiac procedures mentioned a specific scenario where the left subclavian artery could be the source of internal bleeding that mimicked cardiac failure. The symptoms matched exactly what she was witnessing. Clara's pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady as she stepped forward slightly. "Doctor," she said quietly, her words nearly lost beneath monitor alarms. "I noticed something in his pre-admission scans. The angle suggests possible involvement of the subclavian region. If you apply direct compression at that pressure point, this might control what appears to be cardiac failure but could actually be hemorrhage-related." The room fell silent. Dr. Webb looked at her as though she had materialized from the wall itself. His expression cycled through surprise, annoyance, and dismissal within 2 seconds. He turned back to William without responding to her at all, continuing the cardiac protocol he had initiated. Clara's suggestion hung in the air like a ghost nobody wanted to acknowledge. She stepped back to her peripheral position, feeling the familiar sting of invisibility settle over her shoulders like a heavy coat. She had spoken. She had offered knowledge. She had been erased. What happened next was remarkable. Within moments of Clara's unheeded suggestion, Dr. Webb seemed to arrive at the same conclusion through his own analysis. He barked orders to apply direct compression to the area Clara had mentioned. The moment pressure was applied correctly, William's condition began stabilizing. His blood pressure rose. His oxygen saturation improved. The chaotic beeping of monitors began to regularize. Everyone exhaled collectively as the crisis passed. Dr. Webb nodded tersely, issuing instructions for continued monitoring and follow-up scans. The team exchanged glances of professional satisfaction. Nobody mentioned Clara. Nobody turned toward her. Nobody said thank you. As the emergency subsided, Clara returned to her regular duties. She moved through corridors with the same quiet dedication she always demonstrated, her heart heavier than usual but her face serene. This was her life. This was who she was, the invisible helper, the silent observer, the woman who knew things but existed in the margins of other people's stories. She did not know that a man in an expensive suit would soon arrive seeking answers about his friend William. She did not know that her careful, quiet existence was about to collide with a world of wealth and possibility. She knew only that she had spoken truth, and truth had been ignored. She knew only that she would continue anyway, because that was what Clara Brennan did. Alexander Thorne arrived at Westbrook Memorial Hospital 5 days after William Chen's emergency stabilization. At 43, he was not a man accustomed to waiting for answers. His fortune in technology and real estate had been built on the principle that information came when he demanded it. Yet the circumstances of his mentor's near death had shaken him in ways money could not remedy. William had been more than a business associate, he had guided Alexander through his early career, becoming the closest thing to a father figure he had ever known. When Alexander learned that William's life had been saved through an intervention nobody could clearly explain, his curiosity transformed into obsession. The surgical team credited Dr. Marcus Webb with brilliant instincts. But Alexander, who had survived in business by reading between lines, sensed there was more to the story. He began arriving during evening hours, initially under pretense of visiting William during recovery. His true purpose was observation. The night shift existed in shadows, and Alexander had learned long ago that shadows often held truth. He first saw Clara Brennan on a Tuesday evening near the nursing station. She moved past him with such complete lack of recognition that he wondered if he had somehow become invisible himself. Something about her carriage suggested depths her position did not reflect. Her auburn hair was pulled back severely. Her face bore the expression of someone carrying burdens far heavier than physical duties. Over 2 weeks, Alexander restructured his visits to coincide with the night shift. He noticed patterns that fascinated him, Clara sitting in the cafeteria during breaks with dense medical journals, spending her own money on extra blankets for cold patients, holding the hand of dying elderly patients and speaking with tenderness that suggested intimate understanding of loss. One evening, Alexander positioned himself near the medical library where night staff rarely ventured. Clara was reading an article on advanced cardiac procedures, her focus so absolute she did not notice him initially. When she finally sensed his presence and looked up, fear flickered across her features. Wealthy men in expensive suits did not typically venture into night shift territories. "Excuse me," he said with deliberate gentleness. "I noticed you have considerable depth of medical knowledge for a night shift nurse." Clara closed her journal carefully. "I study in my spare time. It helps me provide better care." Her voice was quiet but steady. No defensiveness, only factual accuracy. Alexander introduced himself, watching her eyes widen in recognition. Over the following hours, they talked. He asked about the night she saved William's life. After initial hesitation, Clara told him truth. She had recognized a pattern, offered a suggestion, been ignored, and watched her suggestion proven correct only when another doctor reached the same conclusion independently. The inequity struck Alexander with unexpected force. He could not fathom the dignity required to save someone's life and receive nothing in return. "What are your dreams, Clara?" he asked directly. The question surprised her more than his introduction had. "I want to attend medical school," she said. To accusations of favoritism. Some things matter more than reputation. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see snowflakes catching in his dark hair. "You matter more." Their first kiss happened there, beneath hospital lights and falling snow. It was gentle at first, questioning, then deeper as years of unspoken feeling found expression. When they finally separated, Clara laughed shakily. "This complicates everything." "I know." Alexander pressed his forehead to hers. "I do not care." They went to his penthouse that night, talking until dawn about dreams and fears and futures. When words ran out, they let touches speak instead, tender exploration that left both trembling with emotions too large for language. "I have never felt seen before you," Clara whispered against his chest as morning light filtered through windows. "Then I will spend every day making sure you never feel invisible again." 4 years later, Dr. Clara Brennan completed her residency at Westbrook Memorial Hospital. She wore her white coat with quiet pride, her name embroidered above the pocket, proof that invisible girls could become visible doctors. Alexander attended her graduation ceremony, sitting in the front row with tears he did not bother hiding. That evening, he took her to the hospital courtyard where they had first truly talked, the space where she had initially refused his scholarship, where their improbable connection had begun. "I have something for you," Alexander said, producing a small velvet box. Clara's breath caught as he knelt before her. "You taught me that true worth has nothing to do with wealth or visibility," he said, voice rough with emotion. "You taught me that the most important people are often the ones nobody notices. You made me want to be someone worthy of being seen by you." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring, elegant, understated, perfect. "Clara Brennan, will you marry me?" "Yes." She pulled him up, kissing him through joyful tears. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding was intimate, hospital colleagues who had finally learned to see Clara's worth, Alexander's small circle of genuine friends, and Clara's mother, healthy now thanks to treatments Alexander had quietly funded years earlier. Dr. Clara Brennan established the Invisible Heroes Foundation, providing scholarships and recognition programs for overlooked healthcare workers. The program honored nurses, orderlies, technicians, everyone who labored in shadows while saving lives. At the foundation's inaugural ceremony, Clara stood at the podium in the same hospital where she had once been invisible. "I spent years believing that being unseen was my destiny," she told the assembled crowd. "I thought that helping from the margins was all I deserved. But someone saw me, not despite my invisibility, but through it." He recognized that worth does not require recognition to exist. Her eyes found Alexander in the audience. He smiled at her with love that still made her heart race. To every invisible person in this room, the ones working night shifts, the ones studying during breaks, the ones giving everything without expecting anything, I see you. Your contribution matters. Your dreams are valid. And your time is coming. Applause filled the auditorium. Later that night, in the home they had built together, Alexander held Clara close as city lights glittered through their bedroom windows. "Do you ever miss being invisible?" he asked softly. Clara considered the question. Sometimes. It was simpler, in a way. Safer. And now? She turned in his arms, touching his face with tenderness that still amazed her. Now I understand that being seen by the right person matters more than being seen by everyone. She kissed him gently. You were the right person, Alexander. You always were. They made love slowly, tenderly, two people who had found each other against impossible odds. And Clara Brennan, once invisible, now seen, forever transformed, finally understood that her years in the shadows had been preparing her for this light. Some stories require darkness before the dawn. Hers had been worth every moment of waiting.